their children.
I thought your answer might go somewhere down that line because it seems to be universal now, Matt, when I look around and I see this challenges that families and young kids face, this notion of resiliency, this concept that you reinforce in your podcast. I think it's important for every generation.
Yes.
Yeah, there's this hits very deep for me right now, particularly.
All right, we're good. And you're good too?
I'm ready. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to our monthly program on Community FM, WCNY Community FM. Dan Cummings here, your host of CNY Heroes, Central New York Heroes, our program on and about veterans. And today we've got a couple of special guests because we have a veteran and his spouse, but they're more than just a veteran with a distinguished record and a spouse. They have a podcast of their own, which we're actually recording right now. I probably should be looking at cameras in the room. Matt and Monica, the Matt and Monica podcast. Matt Spellacy and his wife Monica from the Mohawk Valley. But let's get to know them because, Matt, whenever I introduce a guest, I want to make sure I know a little bit about their background. So I'll start with you. You are a veteran. Tell me about your service to our country.
Yeah, I enlisted in 2014. I did 8 years in the Army Reserve as a combat engineer. And I enjoyed all of it. Nothing I would trade, even the bad times, because there's a lot of value I realized in life in going through those hard times. It gives life contrast, and the camaraderie that you develop in the military, it's like no other. Because when you go through hard times with people, specifically, soldiers or your family, it's very valuable, and it really makes you appreciate and be grateful for the day to day.
And Monica, you're not a veteran.
I am not.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I had my grandpa was in the Coast Guard, and my dad was a Marine. So I do have military in my family, and just being with him and going through like the times of him being away for like training and stuff, I can kind of relate to how hard it is for us, the families that are home. So I like to sometimes elaborate on that because that can be hard.
Yeah, we've had some guests on our program. We talk a lot about how important family support, spousal support is for veterans and so forth. But you two, about a year ago, decided to do something public and different than a lot of veterans would do. Matt, you've got a podcast. It's called the Matt and Monica Podcast, right?
Yes, correct.
And it's not exclusively on veterans issues, but it was generated by your experience. Tell me why you started your own podcast, which we're all part of right now.
Honestly, it was just going through hard times myself. I realized in November when we started this, our first episode was just us talking about life and our relationship, because if there's anything about my life I wouldn't change a thing about, it's my relationship with her. She is every bit of as perfect as she seems, and I really mean that. And after that first episode, we had such a connection with people reaching out saying they really appreciated it. And it was right before Veterans Day last year, so I decided to invite my former combat medic, who was Sergeant Matt Kinney, and he's been there for me for the past year and a half. Anytime I've ever made a phone call, and he's a great individual.
Well, I know from sampling, and I haven't been able to listen to all your episodes over the past, because you do what, weekly episode? Not quite, but almost?
Not quite. We would love to get to that point, but we also both work full-time jobs, and we have 5 kids, so we're incredibly busy.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Well,
we're very busy.
But I've listened to enough to know that a lot of what you do, and we're going to talk about and pitch some of the guests you've already had on, and those that you're going to have in the near-term future. But you talk a lot about overcoming obstacles and about how you can get through things that you didn't think you could get through. So many of your guests approach that. Yeah. And you've mentioned it already twice in our conversation, Matt. Can you tell me about some of the hard times, if you don't mind sharing, that brought you to the point where you knew you could help others?
Yeah. Honestly, in 2020, I lost my sister to an overdose. Technically, it wasn't an overdose, but long-term drug use, but she did end up passing away from it.
I'm sorry.
And, that taught me a lot about life. And hard times over the past 2 years or so that have just been out of our control, things that have nothing to do with us, have been pivotal for just showing us how strong and resilient we really are. And I never had a lot of confidence growing up or anything. I never thought I would be on the radio or doing anything with a podcast. But going through adversity has transformed my entire life, and it's transformed every aspect of it for the better. And it's really powerful thing, and people need to hear that. People need to have hope.
I know that concept of resiliency, Monica, comes up a lot in your podcast,
Yes.
and I assume, I mean, you're married to this veteran, and you're supportive. I have a feeling that your military experience had a lot to do with helping him to develop that resiliency, right? Otherwise, what resources do you draw on at times like that?
Yeah.
To just back up a little bit, like I have a very hard past also. I was in an abusive relationship and had to escape from my life with my 2 kids. And that was back in 2009. So I've had a long time to build my armor. And I believe I am the rock for him now. So knowing if I can get through that, he can get through this, and anyone else in his situation or my situation that I went through, if we can get through it and support each other, then anyone can. And I think that's what we really, really try to stress and use that as like stepping stones, as a ladder to crawl out. And that's like your choice, like what path to go down.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I appreciate you offering that. I know
Yes.
It's no wonder now listening to you both why you chose this
Yes.
theme for your podcast and why resiliency and overcoming obstacles
Yes.
has been such an important part of this foundation. So, Monica, before I bounce back to Matt, tell me about some of the guests. You go ahead and brag. This podcast, it's only a year old, but you've
Yeah.
had some very impressive guests.
I would like to first say Nanea Reeves. She is the CEO of Trip VR, and it's a meditation. It's not I don't know how you would explain it.
Yeah, it's a meditation platform that's on all VR applications, the major platforms and stuff. They're partnered with Meta as well.
Virtual
which
reality.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
She was our first, like I want to say big guest, and she really made us feel like we could go farther with her, just being so easygoing and so nice and communicating with us. And the trip has it's helped us so much.
It's guided breathwork meditation, just to elaborate a little
Yep,
bit.
and it's
Sure.
just something healthy that people can do and get into. And I know it sounds weird to a lot of people, like who meditates. It's strange, but
If it helps, nothing's
it
weird.
really helps. Yeah, and we try to push that a lot. Just a lot of people don't know about it, so we try to get it out there.
Yeah.
One of my other favorite guests was Bernard Tony Jr., and he was a medical officer in the White House for Trump and Biden.
From 2018 to 2022, and a 22-year combat vet as well.
This is the type of material that's already up on the Matt
Yes.
and Monica podcast.
Yeah.
But you've got others that are coming up very soon, right?
We do. I especially want to talk a little bit more about Sergeant Kinney. Sergeant Kinney, he lost 3 soldiers from my prior unit in 2012 in Afghanistan to an IED debt. And hearing his story on our podcast, again, that's episode 2, him overcoming that, not only overcoming that, I learned on the show that he came home to going through a divorce and a separation. So him being able to overcome that was when something clicked in my mind when I was listening to him tell me that story. I'm like, that's the ticket. Like hearing somebody's testimony of how they overcame hardship. That is what I want to do, and I want to hear people's story.
Yeah. And I think not too long after we were having this discussion, you're going to take a road trip and you've got another very impressive interview coming.
Yeah, we're going to be recording with Nick Lavery, which is a Green Beret. He is the first, I heard second, but he's active duty special forces, even though he has an above the knee amputation. And if you look at this guy, I heard somebody quote, he looks like my Call of Duty character that I would create. I mean,
Definitely.
he is the ideal, just incredibly inspiring individual. And we're not only are we recording with him directly afterwards, we're recording with Mark Green, who is a Navy SEAL. He was a sniper instructor as well, and he's best-selling author of the book Unsealed. And he's been incredible to accommodate us. And yeah.
Well, if this sounds like a cross promotion for a couple of different shows, you're absolutely right. I want to remind all the listeners and viewers of, is that my camera there?
It is.
Of the Matt and Monica podcast, that what you're seeing here is CNY Heroes, Central New York Heroes is what we call it, because we consider all of our veterans and those who support them to be heroes, having served in uniform to defend our country and our freedoms. My name's Dan Cummings. I've been doing this for 2 years now. This is our 25th episode every month on WCNY.org/communityfm. But this program is also on all of your major podcast platforms, our program. So you just search WCNY Community FM or any major podcast platform. If you've got Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or Pocket Casts, you can you can listen to me, because normally, except for Matt and Monica being here, we wouldn't have all these cameras. So, and we're obviously going to let you all who listen to CNY Heroes every month know we'll give you the link on our show page to the Matt and Monica podcast. So this is special for us, good for us to be here. Matt, how have you managed to make contacts to get these high-level interviews?
Honestly,
Who do you know?
just talking to people, and I realize the power. If you just are real with people, I never would have in a million years thought I would have the ability to talk to the people that I've talked to already, and it's only kind of amplifying. Not even kind of. It's amplifying over time, and
it's just as simple as reaching out, and it's amazing to see how many people, if you just ask, say yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
People want to talk.
So I've said before, and maybe I misspoke, it's not entirely about veterans. It's obviously
Right.
hosted by a veteran and his wife, but you're obviously, you get into other areas as well. But the veteran focus is certainly a key theme.
Yes.
Of every
Veteran and first responders as well.
veterans and
Yeah.
first responders.
I'm former law enforcement as well. I worked for Boonville Police Department for about 2 years back in 2011. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. There's a lot of, the number of podcasts, Monica, that are out there are overwhelming. And there's a lot of
Yes.
them which fall into what you might call the self-help category.
Yep.
And there are those hearing about Trip and the VR episode, think, well, maybe that's just another self-help podcast. But as far as I can tell from listening to and watching a few, your podcast is far from another run-of-the-mill self-help podcast.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, why do you think, though, this topic of resiliency is so important? I mean, a lot of us in civilian life, I've never served. My father served in World War II, but I never served. Why do you think this issue of interviewing people, as you've done on your show, and then sharing those stories with a broad audience is helpful to hear people tell their stories of overcoming obstacles, punching through those walls and finding something better on the other side?
I feel like in every story, they might be similar, but there's a lot of different factors that people can relate to on a deeper level. And I know a lot of people might go to a therapist or do medication and stuff, but if there's more of a natural, maybe safer way or a different connection with someone that's been through it, and if you talk to them, I think just the connection alone could have a huge impact
Yes.
on their, whatever they're going through.
Yeah, I think I posed the question earlier to Monica, Matt, but now I'll ask you directly. Because you've taken this on as your vocation now to do this podcast and reach, what do you got, 75,000?
78, I believe. or
On
so,
YouTube?
Yeah,
Hello.
on YouTube. We're also on Apple and Spotify, but that's
No, go ahead. I ran on about my podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about where you're available besides this YouTube channel.
Well, if you Google Matt and Monica, we're at the top of the search engine results, so
Excellent.
that's a plus. But yeah, we're also on Apple and Spotify as well. We generally post to YouTube first. That is our primary, and we intend on doing live streams more often. We did do a live stream episode, which was different. It was nerve-wracking
fun.
for us, but yeah, I think it helped for this.
Mm-hmm.
But I just really want to tack on to something that going back to the resilience when she was talking about it. I want to talk about some of the things that has worked for us, because the adversity that we have made it through and are currently going through realistically, there's a lot of people that it could break. There's a lot of people suffering all over the country right now that are going through things that are not only sad but just completely preventable. But it's not happening. But more importantly, though, is like what works. How do you keep going to your day to day without relying on drugs and alcohol? And my main thing is physical fitness. And physical fitness, I believe, is the strongest antidepressant. And I don't know why it's not pushed more. I mean, I started running 8 miles with my border collie off leash around Sylvan Beach about 6 months ago, and about 3 times a week. And people are like, wow, you really like running that much? No, it's I think if you seek suffering, if you do intentional, create your own adversity, I think it really does kind of streamline your life. It gives that contrast when you're actually going through hard times. Because for me, running 8 miles and yelling at the dog, and I'm a big guy. It's a long distance for me. That pain is very important.
Not to mention I did distance running myself, and the endorphins that are released,
Yes.
and the physical things that just happen when you can exercise.
Yes.
Well, they say running's the opposite of drugs. While you're running, you feel horrible. Afterwards, you feel great.
Yes.
While people that rely on drugs, they feel horrible, or if they feel great during the moment, they feel horrible afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similarities there.
So here's the question I asked Monica earlier. Because you've become kind of experts in resilience and you're able to find guests who help you and reinforce that story of overcoming obstacles and pushing through, what you've mentioned, obviously, the tragedy that in your own life with the loss to the overdose. But in the when you had the uniform, when you were serving, were there things that you saw, that you experienced in the service that also helped bring you to this point in your life?
Yeah, I had a lot of friends go through hard times while they were in the service, and even though it may not have been directly related to their service, but they had stuff going on at home. I had friends that needed to seek mental health help, and I had a friend that did. And there's so many men out there, and women, I think more so the men, that just they think it's not okay to ask for help. I'm very thankful that I did. I went and asked for help last year. I walked in and talked to somebody to the walk-in clinic, and it was one of the most life-changing experiences. It's actually my first ever YouTube video. I talked about it, how there was there was a combat vet there, that he was a police officer, that sat down with me and he just listened to me. He talked to me, listened to me, asked me what I'm going through, and man, I spilled my guts to this poor guy, and he acted like he cared so much. And that experience changed me. I actually wrote a letter to the VA thanking them for him going out of his way, going outside of his job duties, and they gave him an I Care award, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
He was nominated by the chief of police for the VA here in Syracuse.
You mentioned Syracuse, and I've mentioned both of you are Mohawk Valley natives. Monica, tell me, because I love the idea that our show is based on primarily local people, to CNY, Central New York, which goes all the way to Northern New York and the Southern Tier. We have, of course, our own national audience on podcasts. But you work in the Camden School District now. Did you grow up in the Mohawk Valley?
I'm from Hamilton, actually, originally, and I've moved around like down south and stuff. But my home is Hamilton. We moved to the Camden School District 6 years ago. So that was one of the best things I think we've ever done. We love where we live, and Camden's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great community. And you mentioned McConnellsville and Sylvan Beach. Matt, where did you grow up?
Right in Camden.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So you're a native.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you were growing up in Camden, so now do you teach at Camden?
I'm an assistant.
Okay, fantastic. Same school for L&M Elementary School.
Yes.
Did you ever think when you were growing up in little Camden, New York, that you'd have your own? You'd be atop the Google search list for a podcast like this?
I don't think we thought 2 years ago that would happen.
No. I'm way out of what would have been my comfort zone a year ago, but it's changed dramatically. So.
Yeah.
What did you think? Often when I have a veteran who has served us, and I ask them to trace their story and the arc of their narrative life as a civilian, what did you think about did you enter the service right after high school?
I was actually 27 years old, and I was fresh out of a divorce, and I decided, I always wanted to join the military, but I didn't want to hurt my family per se, which I'm not saying it will, but being away can be a strain on the family. So I said, hey, I'm already going through a divorce. I might as well. I've always wanted to, and I actually tried to go back to duty, but the recruiter told me I couldn't due to my dependents. He lied, but no, but I have no regrets. So I had an incredible experience, like I said, with the reserves training that I was able to fortunately have.
And when you left the reserves, you went right into law enforcement in Boonville? Or?
No, that was back in 2011.
That was a while ago.
2011 to 2013, I believe. I worked on the road there. I also worked for the State Park Police for a little bit as a ranger. But then after I transitioned out of that, I went into IT full time, and at about the same time I got into IT is when I joined the reserves.
Gotcha. Well, it's quite a record. It's quite a record of service. And you mentioned earlier law enforcement as well, that you first responders, whether it's law enforcement, firefighters, emergency medical, they undergo a lot of the same stresses that military people do. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've learned from either one of you, Monica or Matt, but both about law enforcement and what they go through every single day in this country, and the perceptions of it, perhaps?
Yeah, it's one of those things, especially, I'm going to refer to Badillo. He was my platoon sergeant. He worked for the state police. He retired. He was the Governor Cuomo's helicopter pilot before he transitioned. He works for an airlines full time now. I had him and his father on my podcast, and they talk about their life story. His father was a retired state trooper as well, and he was also a Marine Corps veteran. We drove down to Saratoga and recorded with them in person back in, I believe, June. And to answer your question, though, what they go through is, the day-to-day is it's incredible. Just the stress that they have to deal with. Then they have to go home And I remember going to bar fights and whatnot at 1, 2 in the morning, and you're having a late DWI where somebody gets into a physical altercation. And I remember going home, and then I got to go to bed. I was working 2 jobs at the time, so then I had to go to work, and I couldn't sleep after that excitement. And, PTSD and mental health for that area. And firefighters, too. We had the fire chief of the North Bay Fire Department on our podcast, and he talked about what they go through. And I learned so much about that. I had no idea what volunteer fire departments
Just
go
the
through.
mental health and mental help that they do or don't get. I feel like it's so limited, but Joe is his name, and the stuff that they have going on in the firehouse to help with their mental health after, a car accident or stuff that they've seen or helped with. They're pretty amazing at that, and they don't just help the firefighters themselves. If you need to go and talk to somebody, they're there for you. So it's not just scooping you up and helping you like that. It's mental health, too, for them.
And there
to
are
help.
things on the Matt and Monica podcast, right, Monica, that can be of great help to these
Yes.
first responders.
Oh, absolutely.
To search past episodes, perhaps, and see.
Yeah.
When I was reporting all those years on News Channel 9, we had tremendous respect for the volunteer fire service, which sometimes they get no respect, and the paid anybody in the uniformed services, because they put their lives on the line every day in what would otherwise be civilian life. They're not civilians. They're serving their community. And I know in recent years, law enforcement has come under the microscope like never before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate their hands are so tied, and it's like accountability has become less and less of a factor, for people. And I'm hoping that with recent changes in the country, I'm hoping that things can get better for people, because
I think making more awareness about what their struggles are, we can, as a community, help them and help support them.
Well, then let me bring you back, Monica, to where you earn your daily bread as a teacher's assistant in the Camden Elementary School, grades K through 6?
It's pre-K to 4th.
To 4th. So
Yes.
these are young kids.
Yes.
They've got older siblings, though. Can you just give me a sense of what you've seen? How long have you been in the schools?
So just last year, I started, so pretty fresh, I would say.
So what are you seeing? Because I want to broaden this a little bit, because you guys are such of a help on your show to those who need help. My impression from kind of keeping my eyes open in the world as it's evolved over the past few years is that our kids are under a lot of stress, even those young kids that you see
They
every
are,
day.
yes. The school has been pretty amazing trying to support them with not just academically, but with love and mental health for them when they're stressed, like breathing and having time away from whatever is hurting them. A lot of their stress comes from the home life, to be honest. And it's sad because we can only do so much. And just getting it out there, having the awareness out there for what the kids are going through, but also hopefully if there's a parent, watching or listening, thinking, I'm going through this, I'm putting my kid through that, I need to get help.
Yeah.
Maybe make something click so they can better their lives for them and their children.
I thought your answer might go somewhere down that line, because it
Yeah.
seems to be universal now, Matt, when I look
Yes.
around and I see this challenges that families and young kids face, this notion of resiliency, this concept that you reinforce in your podcast. I think it's important for every generation.
Yes.
Yeah, there's this hits very deep for me right now, particularly. There's a lot of things going on in this world, and there's a lot of suffering going on, and there's institutions that have been put in place to protect certain individuals, and those institutions are doing everything but that. And I'm so proud of this country, and I really truly in my heart believe that things are going to change for the better over the next few years. And we got to be optimistic. And me personally, I don't try to push faith upon anybody, but we started going to church in December of last year, and that has changed our life so much. And my church is amazing, the support, and being able to cast your anxieties into faith. It's one of those things. Because I heard a quote that sometimes is all you can do in life is hold on when others can let go, or others would let go. And right now I'm holding on. I'm never going to let go, but things are very difficult right now.
Well, it sounds like there's at least 3 of us in this room, and maybe a 4th with our engineer Joel, who would sign on to that same concept, that faith and a belief in something bigger than yourself and rooted in tradition is somebody's faith tradition is very, very important. But between religion, faith, government, education, the media, the trust in the institutions, all of it. It seems that you read the polls and you see what's happening. Trust and faith in the institutions that we depend upon, including religion and the government, and and law enforcement and the media. I think, I'm not asking for the Matt and Monica solution to all this, but it sounds like, we are going through a transition that hopefully will restore trust in some of these institutions that have earned our trust.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I think more people that are involved, because there's so many people, good people that are involved in these groups, and they have the ability to create change or speak up. And there's so many people that are scared and they're not speaking up because they're worried about the repercussions. And don't get me wrong, by all means, I'm worried about the repercussions as well, because this day and age, you don't know what people are capable of. But especially when there's, the money is the root of all evil. And when there's a lot of money involved.
I was just going to say, it comes down to money, but people need to take a step back and think about their own morals and to lead with love, because
Yes.
you can't fix things with hatred or selfishness. You have to give out love. That's
Well,
good.
yeah. I mean, unless hearts and minds are open,
Right.
nothing good happens.
Right.
And I think it's not only ironic, I think it's appropriate that this program is hitting the airwaves and the podcast platforms and the links for audio and YouTube just a couple of days before Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I think during the holidays especially, whether they're veterans, spouses of veterans, people who love veterans, people who are trying to basically cope with life, period. The holidays can be just about the most overwhelming time of
Yeah.
the year.
Yeah. I love holidays. I never really got overwhelmed. I love family. I'm one of those weirdos that enjoys interacting with people in general. So,
Well, let me spend the last minute or two that we have together to let you guys pitch something that I just discovered because we invited you here, the Matt and Monica podcast. Tell me about it, Monica, where we can find it, and what you guys do that has become so popular.
Yep. Well, you can go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple.
the mattandmonicapodcast.com.
Yep. We also have a link tree, which is on our website, and it shows all the social medias all in like a row, so it's super easy to find everything. We just started to try to help the community expand to the world, maybe, and I told him maybe we could be those people that could make a ripple
Yeah.
and start.
Spread the light.
Yeah.
Well, I think you already are from what I've seen and heard. I haven't watched them all, but Matt, tell me who you've got coming up in the near-term future on the
man.
Matt and Monica podcast.
So we got Dan Simmons, who's a Green Beret, James Sisko, Marine Corps recon author, Kevin Stark, he's a Navy SEAL, Atlas Altman, he was a White House military commander, special operations communications director for all of Afghanistan. Tim Cruikshank is the Navy SEAL, he's the CEO of Bone Frog Coffee. Diego Uglade, Navy SEAL and author. Danny Caballero, Green Beret podcaster. Wow. Marty Strong, Navy SEAL author. Sean Matson, Navy SEAL. Roseanne Minshew, former CIA. T.D. Richardson, Navy SEAL, former U.S. Marine Corps Infantry. Damon Brown, Green Beret, he's an author. Jason Pike, former Lieutenant Colonel, also an author. And then Robert Sweatman, he's a Navy SEAL. And all these are
We have
confirmed.
a lot.
Oh, these are the ones that are coming up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not to
Yeah.
mention what's already been archived
Yes.
over the last year.
I real quick, we had former 3-star general, commander of the entire Army Reserve, General Charles Lucky. He was on our podcast as well. He, like I said, 43-year Green Beret and just incredible guy. And he talks about the three pinnacles, the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of that's most important to really work on.
Well, I'll listen to some of these backed episodes because I think I'm going to hear a lot more than just about veterans and so forth. It sounds like you've got important themes of resiliency and faith and trust and getting from point A to point B. Matt and Monica Spellacy, thank you for being my guests today. It'll allow me to pitch our own thing one more time because you YouTubers on the Matt and Monica podcast here are new to me. I'm Dan Cummings. What you've been watching is CNY Heroes, Central New York Heroes. It's a monthly program I do on WCNY Community FM. I host it, and you can find our past 25 episodes of this program over the past couple of years by going to wcny.org/communityfm or search WCNY Community FM. It's on your major podcast platforms, Apple, right, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Pocket Cast. So welcome aboard. Thank you, Matt and Monica, for what you're doing
Thank you.
for your listeners and viewers, and appreciate you sharing time with me. We talked about Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful, blessed holiday season, everybody. And we'll see you with a brand new program here next month. But this one will be archived forever. Good wisdom from Matt and Monica Spellacy. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.